Thanks for joining us this week on Email Geeks at Home Drinking Coffee. Join your hosts Chris Marriott and Paul Schreiner each week as they talk email marketing, life, purpose, faith, but mainly email marketing. If you're looking for some normalcy in these crazy times, you've come to the right place.
Welcome back to Email Geeks at Home Drinking Coffee. My name is Paul Schreiner. I'm here with my friend, colleague, co-host,
Chris Marriott.
I wasn't done.
Oh.
Co-host. Yeah, okay, I was done.
Okay. And hi, I'm Chris Marriott, Paul's best friend,
Sure.
and also the co-host of the one and only Email Geeks at Home Drinking Coffee. We have another great guest for you today, MK Marsden, and we want to get right to the discussion because we think you're going to find it very inspiring and uplifting. So, Paul, unless you have anything else to add, I'd say we go right to the program.
Yeah, tune in, stick around afterwards to hear us talk through all things email. You know what I mean?
And you'll see fan favorite David Inman make an appearance. So
something to look forward to.
Always.
Enjoy.
All right, we'd like to welcome our guest today, my friend and former colleague, MK Marsden. But before I go any further with the intro, which is extensive, how would you like for Paul and I to refer to you? Is it MK or is it Mary Kay? Because I know you've gone by both.
Yeah, so you've known me with my dual personality.
Correct.
Yeah.
Used to be Mary Kay, and then there was this brand of cosmetics,
Yeah.
Mary Kay Cosmetics, right? Pink, Cadillac, hair, blonde, not my style. So went to MK. Now there's this dude, Michael Kors. Everybody's always taking my brand. But
You know,
so you can call me either.
dark enough, he can tell you all about that.
Paul and I are trying. Hey, the burden of being trendsetters, like the three of us, is copycats. I mean, Paul and I started an email podcast, and now they're coming out of the woodwork. But before we go off, as we do,
You call me what you want, Chris. Just don't call me late for dinner. But you
let me finish my intro, and then we can get to the funny game. So
he's written his intro up. Pay attention.
MK is a seasoned executive and board member, adept at collaborating with leading people across industries, cultures, job functions, and etc. What we're really delighted to have her here is she's created or led 8 different companies in 5 different companies, all at the leading edge of technology, and always to enhance really the performance and make life better for people and businesses. In her career, she's raised over $100 million in early stage companies. She's an investor, I believe, in 2 private equity funds, a philanthropist investing in women-led companies, which we'll get to later, and a competitive athlete, which we will definitely get to later. In short, she's an amazing person, and she's also Canadian. Now,
there you go.
I only point that out because this is the second Canadian we've had on our podcast, and we've only had 10 episodes plus the bonus episode. So before anybody accuses us of over-representing Canadians in our broadcast, I just want you to know we're doing it, and the heck with you. So
we go where the talent is, Chris, and if the talent's in Canada, that's where we go.
We will go to the ends of the world to find the best talent. And so we're delighted, MK, that you're here today.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's great to be here. It was nice to have a reason to shower, fix my hair, and get out of my Lululemons.
There you go.
So thanks for that.
Though I understand Lululemons can be quite comfortable.
I'm wearing them right now.
Well, let's do the obligatory round the world of what we're drinking before we get into the real questions. And fan favorite David Inman, I know we're recording. I just want to make sure, are you getting good levels for everybody?
Everybody sounds and looks amazing.
Wow.
That's why he's fan favorite.
That is why he's fan favorite. Works for me.
All right. So, Paul, you want to kick off? Because you're
Well,
left to right in mine.
Sure, you said round the world, and that's absolutely accurate for me. I'm drinking Buna Boon coffee. Buna coffee. It's out of Seattle. It's made by an Ethiopian. It was actually sent to me by a friend of mine who does missionary work to the Somali people. She was in Somalia, Ethiopia for a year, recently come home, and she's been watching the show and said, can I send you some coffee? So I wanted to feature that. Thank you, Doug and Carlo Person. Appreciate the coffee. It's absolutely fantastic. Boon Buna, Ethiopian coffee.
Excellent.
You go next. I'm reaching for mine.
We forgot that you wanted to see brand. Okay, so I mixed it up this week, but not in the way Paul would hope. I've changed my coffee cup, and one that producer, and you know what, I've learned that we need to, my new coffee cup,
Okay,
for
yeah.
those of you only listening to the podcast, has a dachshund on it. And on the back it says, me plus dog equals love.
Well, it says heart. It actually says me plus dog equals heart, but yeah.
Well, which heart is, right. So new mug after last week's explanation of the original mugs. But filling it, as always, Santo Domingo coffee from the Dominican Republic. And for those of you who've tuned in, Dominican Republic was, Paul and his wife, right before the lockdown, were due to go there on an all expenses paid trip. It was going to be delightful. Just Paul and his wife, kids at home, at my understanding.
5 kids at home. That's right.
All kids at home. And unfortunately, that trip was canceled. Hopefully, he'll get to do it next year. But you know, I like to bring this every week and just remind him of what might have been. So,
well, and I appreciate that, Chris.
And MK, yourself?
Kick-ass coffee, kind of the general theme for my life.
Yep.
Out of Vancouver, I believe.
It is, yeah.
One of the new brands that I'm learning while I'm under house arrest in my native country of Canada. So I do the pour over here at this Airbnb that I've been in.
Well, which we'll get to. Don't stop trying to lead the interview.
Okay.
Stop trying to lead the interview.
Kick-ass coffee and always trying to run ahead.
There you go.
Awesome.
Well, I do know Kick-Ass Coffee. It's very good. That's a good choice on your part.
Yeah, and I'm trying all the different flavors. This is the dark and coarse, which is sweet, smoky, audacious. That sounds like a good way to spend an afternoon.
That's often how I've heard fan favorite David Inman describe.
Well, and the method of
I put it on my match profile. That's me. Sweet, smoky, and audacious. There we go.
Okay. Now, we like to do these things chronologically. So before, I know you want to get to what you've been doing recently. I know the being marooned in an Airbnb and all that, and we're going to get to that. But I want to go back in time because you've had an incredible career and worked for some incredible companies. And in between that, you've started several companies and sold your own companies. We want to touch on all those, but let's start at the beginning. One of your first jobs, if maybe your first, it was with Novell. And I think that was your first maybe foray into tech, if I'm correct. Now, the kids won't recognize Novell, but those of us who've been around the block a few times will know that they were a massive player in multi-platform network operating systems in the late 80s, early 90s.
Well, hardware and software, Chris. They were everywhere.
Yeah, they were everywhere. And Novell NetWare, I mean, it was a dominant form of personal computing and networking. And so it was a huge deal when you went to work for them, and you had a very important job at the company. So, and Paul and I were talking about this. People, it's true that the tech industry in general today is still a boys' club. I mean, none of us are going to argue that. But compared to what it was in the 80s, today it's a walk in the park. It was a massive boys' club back in the 80s. So, question sort of twofold. What drew you into a male-dominated industry, and how did you survive and thrive? Because I know you did a tremendous job, and you rose to very senior position there. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So how did I get into this? My father wanted a boy. Just start from the beginning, right? No, I grew up in Canada, as we've talked about, and I was a computer scientist. So I wanted to be a vet. I didn't do very well at that. My dad said, take a computer class. It was linear thinking, and I kind of excelled. I did 2 startups in Canada. The first one, a networking company that was even before Novell Networks.
Okay.
Wow.
Back in the 80s, Canada was really good at networking. We had Bell Northern Research, Northern Telecom. we're a big country with few people in it. So we had to network and get good at that pretty fast. So there was a company called Naboo Network, 1982. I'm a very young child at this stage.
Oh, I know. You graduated high school at 12.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Chris. This is why we're friends.
so did I, of course. I mean, who didn't?
And we were bringing computers to the home to connect people together, to improve education, to share information. And this is 1982. We wrote some of the original protocols that are still being used under TCP/IP and things like that. So I kind of got excited about computer networks because of what they could do.
Right.
And no one knew what was going on. So the fact that I wasn't very smart wasn't very much of a problem. Everybody was equally unsmart. So all you had to do was outsmart the next person and you could get something done.
Right. In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed queen is one-eyed person is queen.
Yeah. And if she just scurries a little faster, she can get ahead, right?
Right.
Well, but if I can hit pause for a second and say, this is so early in the evolution of networking and network computers. You saw something no one else saw.
Yeah, and I still do.
Right.
And, that's a bit of a problem.
Sure. It's a gift and it's a double-edged sword, right?
It is. It really is. Yeah. So I had met the NetWare guys when I was in my second startup here in Canada.
Right.
And they were hardware guys, as you said, right? They were doing 286 machines, and they wanted to drive the price of hardware down so that people would buy it so we could connect more. The whole purpose of being in hardware. And back then you had to worry about the hardware, the operating system, the networking card, the fiber, like the number of considerations was like spectacularly crazy.
Right.
So they bought a company that I worked for, Doug and Nancy Woodward, who wrote Btrieve, which was the underlying record manager for all PC software. And they'd come out of mainframes, and every mainframe operating system had this technology, and then PCs didn't. And it's a little bit like saying they invented door handles. Like every door needs a handle, right? It was just like, and we hooked up with the hardware guys out of Provo, Utah, and we became Novell with the intent of, distributing information and connecting the world. Now we started with a small slice. We went to secretaries and we helped them share files and print. We knew back then that we had a big vision, but we had to solve a small, really expensive problem.
Right.
And hardware was expensive, and printers were expensive, and 8-inch floppy disks were expensive. Like all these things were expensive.
Right.
Tapes were expensive. So we went in through kind of the people who were dealing with data at that time and sold into them. We made a ton of great acquisitions, and we had spectacular leadership. I've had the privilege of working for just exceptional men, and Ray Norda was an exceptional leader at Novell. And it was just a wide open space. We did things like I flew to California and got to port the operating system with Bill Joy sitting at Sun Microsystem at a boring trade show that nobody was at. And he was like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I have an operating system. He's like, oh, let's see if it works on my machine. Right. And that was the nature. And I still have his business card, Paul. I have his card.
No, Nerd Paul is blowing up right now.
So I'm cool by accident.
Oh,
Right.
but cool indeed.
And I don't, as Chris will attest, I don't stop.
Right.
And I'm really, really lucky to be surrounded by great people, not all of them, but a lot, who will push the innovation, who will push me to my highest level of performance. And, a lot of them, I warned Chris, I don't want to blow smoke up his ass, but when they bought my company at Axiom, Chris let us be in his office in New York, created a space for us, championed me across the entire organization, got all of his salespeople selling this, believed in the technology. And so if you just persist enough, eventually you find a guy like Chris, or you find a guy like Ray Norda, you find somebody, or you find Charles Morgan, or you find Don Steele, or somebody who's going to push and pull with you. And that's how you get there.
Well, in fairness to MK, I mean, the company, and I want to talk about that because, and thank you for those kind words, but I would have been a moron not to do what I did because, a couple of weeks ago, we had the godfather of podcasting on when we had Adam Curry. And this week, and we're an email podcast first, though all this stuff's fascinating. And MK has done some great stuff in email, including, I mean, we could refer to her as the godmother of transactional email. Something that today, we all take for granted, and that it's easy to do, and it's pretty, and it all comes out of the same platform, and it's branded, and you can track people on promotional versus transactional, all that. Before MK's company called Message Effects, transactional email predominantly was plain text shot out of an ERP system, and nobody knew any tracking on that. And so talk about that. I mean, so MK launched a company called Message Effects again, which had what I love is how they solved it out of the gate, because everything evolves, and again, now we have companies like Bluecore that grew up only doing transactional email based on APIs and data transfer. But back then, that wasn't available. So, talk about how you got the idea to do it, and then talk about how you did it, because I think it's also fascinating. And you can hear the excitement of, I mean, when it came to me, all I could see was all of these huge opportunities to sell more email to more clients, because, how could they not see how brilliant it was? So again, I'll let you talk. How did you get the idea, and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was a great one. So I'm sitting in Austin. I was living there at the time on Lake Austin, and my American Express bill comes, the printed bill, and it's got a flap on it, and it's got a leather calendar. So I open my bill and I look at my bill and I go like, what the fuck? Everything I buy. I'm a vegetarian who owns no leather, and you're sending me an offer for an analog leather calendar. Your brand is member since 1987, right? And we know and care about you. So I'm going ballistic. So I called a friend of mine who ran the CRM system at American Express. It's like, how can this be? Like, we got just-in-time printing. Can't you at least send me like coffee in Austin or something? Then all of a sudden I go, I gotta go. Hang up the phone, and I call another one of our friends, Chris, Charlie Stryker.
Oh,
Charlie.
God rest his soul. Great guy.
So I called Charlie. I said, I have my second best idea ever. My first best idea requires both my parents to die because it's inappropriate. But this is my second best idea.
We'll return to that at some
another
future
podcast. My mother's still alive.
We'll return that at some point in the future. Not too soon, because we don't want.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't wish ill on them.
Right.
Oh, no.
But we'll get back to that.
So I'm like, Charlie, I got a really good idea. And I'm going to need your help, and I'm going to need some money. And I go from that bill to, oh my God, let's look at the emails that are coming out of the ERP, Chris. That's exactly what you said. I'm like, no one's turned that into a marketing channel.
Right.
And they have the highest open rate. What's the highest open rate email that no one has used very well till now? What's the number one most open email?
Purchase confirmation.
Password reset.
You got it.
Yeah,
you got it.
Chris.
Well, I don't forget my passwords, so you know what? I've never seen one of those.
Well, for the rest of us,
He uses the same password every time. That's what he's saying. It's Dachshund123.
So all of a sudden we're like, oh, wow. think about this from a bill presentment. And so it evolves from the American Express analog bill that makes no sense to we can do this. So then there was a company in Austin that had done something similar internal to the organization. So we go to them. They're not having any success. We buy the technology, we repackage it. And the number one rule to the engineering team was, I never want to talk to an IT person again. I'm coming out of Nobel, right? So I'm a little shy about this. I'm like, we have to organize it so we never have to talk to another person again, another IT person. So can we grab them somehow in the cloud? How do we catch the emails between point A and point B is the big dilemma. Well, you can't, but you can relay them.
I was going to say SMTP relay.
So that's close to catching them in the email. But to do that, you've got to get canned spam to let you do that, because that's what spammers do.
Yep.
So off we go to talk to canned spam and say, if we relay emails like this from this ID to us, forwarded to the consumer, can we get that approved as transactional email? And to Chris's comment, so then we create the category transactional email.
Right.
Then we go and get some early adopters, coffee.com, summary.com, right? Quick, get them barely charged. We did the freemium
Right.
just to get the volume, get it proven. Simultaneously in the industry, data companies are buying email platform providers.
Well, we've seen that, that's for sure. They still are.
First wave of consolidation. Yep.
So Charlie says, maybe we should go. Maybe we should get bought. And we were looking for data, right? The more we know about the consumer and we know what they're doing right now, we can create a better experience, which is always my intent.
Right.
So we end up with about 4 or 5 different suitors at the table. Charlie was our chairman. I was the CEO. We were a small team. I think we were about 12 at the end.
Yep.
And we got Axiom, Charles Morgan, who could see it right away too, to do this while he was doing the digital impact acquisition.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. So we get rolled in with those guys. I get to meet Chris Marriott. I get to have an office in New York City,
Which was the most fun office, right next to Babs, rest her soul, which was great.
And we went and created this whole category, which then led to, omni-channel marketing, omni-channel email, and all of that.
Well, and what I think is interesting about I did some thinking about transactional send. The work that you did there, it doesn't just live in a platform, it lives in every single platform. And it lives in legislation. There is very much a different path. Well, if it's transactional, you can do this. Or if it's promotional, you can do this. And so all of that early work that you were talking about has flourished, right? Because good tech is not about good programming necessarily. It's about good problems being solved, right?
Yeah. I'm not smart enough to invent anything.
Sure.
I'm just precocious enough to solve big problems. Like I literally stand there and stare at things and complain and go, this makes no sense. I'm going to go change it.
That's awesome.
It makes no sense.
But the elegance of the solution, I mean, this is what I love, because people, this was not the technology didn't exist to merely API the transaction details back then. What happening, and correct me if I'm wrong, MK, is the transactional email, as it would have gone to the customer directly, was sent to Digital Impact / Axiom Digital. And at least the very earliest versions, what we did was wrap that plain text in branding, and which was brilliant. We didn't rip it apart. But we made it look branded. And so to me, that was a genius of it. It was, we don't have to solve for everything right out of the way. We can make it much better. And on top of that, and Paul, you touched on it, and this is what Sprint, I think, was the first one to buy it out of our clients. Karen Riley, I think, also saw it as being, hugely beneficial, particularly to a company like Sprint. You buy a phone, you got to buy other stuff, car charge or whatever. And it was the first time that I really saw a lot of use of people who bought this also bought this, because that's what you could also put into transactional emails for the first time, as long as you were limited to less than 30% or whatever the rule was of the message. So you not only really, again, and I don't want to blow sunshine up you, but you not only sort of pioneered the whole, branded and trackable transactional email, but the first real valuable use of people who bought this also bought this. And I think that was industry breaking. And sorry, there's a phone. This is what happens when you record live. Hopefully someone will pick up that phone in my house.
They're probably watching, Chris.
Then I will.
It's Congress calling to talk about our can spam laws.
Yes, that's Karen Riley. Karenriley. Got it. All right. She just want to make sure she spelled it.
Transition, Marriott.
Yeah.
You know what? If I'm not, you're always on the razor's edge when you're recording these things live.
Well, so, I think, I'll take it for a second, Chris.
Yeah.
I think this is absolutely perfect where you are right now, just your life in Canada right now. It's very much, here's where we are, right? Mm-hmm. This is where we are. And I haven't heard you complain yet. You're like, giddy up, let's get after it, right? And that's that unbreakable spirit, unbreakable. I mean, that was kind of why we had talked about having you on as a guest in the first place, right? And so, phones ring. Children come in, I broke my everything, right? And so like the number of calls where I'm so sorry, right? And it's just, no, this is where we are right now.
Right.
Yep.
And so, Chris, go ahead, answer your phone.
Yeah.
I never pick up that call. It's Rose Pest Solutions, and all they're doing is calling to tell me when they're going to show up and do their pest solution stuff. I don't need, I can listen to the message. So I wouldn't have picked it up anyway, but thank you for the offer, Paul. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I'm here for you.
All right. So
Chris, to your comment, you know why I do the little things? I grew up when, they're there. You better say hello. They're trying to create a great customer experience and take care of you.
Paul, stop calling. Stop calling.
Okay, I'll stop.
All right. She was about to make a great point. Sorry, MK.
I grew up when building computer software was expensive, right? I was on mainframes, and you used to have to pay to use them. So back in the 80s, you couldn't just willy-nilly agile something out there.
Right.
You had to really, really think of, okay, if we're going to spend $3 million, and it's got to make $30 million in a year, what is that?
Blood pressure rising.
What is that? Because you get one shot at this, right? So I come from that product marketing discipline. So that's what you saw at Message Effect was like, oh, we could create an email platform, but it was like, no. Here's the one thing no one's doing, like no one's touching it, and we can see it. So do the one thing, be the best at it, create delight, then we'll do the next slice and the next slice.
Right.
And I think, people have gotten a little confused because technology's so cheap and easy now.
Yeah.
People have gotten confused about what is it that's actually valuable out there. Right?
It's, as you said that, what's interesting is Bluecore, who again I think people would say is the leader in this area, though I think they're trying to be an ESP, but they sort of followed your model. By that I mean they didn't send the emails themselves. They fired off an API to another platform. You sent yours off to Impact because you were bought. And they partnered with I think their biggest partnership was with Salesforce Exact Target. So they would fire off to them. So even they were like, they probably looked at what you did and said, yeah, we don't need to be the transactional ESP. We need to be the transactional relay methodology that's better than everybody else.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And we really did sell a lot, Chris. We sold to
Oh, I
Sprint.
know.
We sold to CVS Pharmacy.
Yep.
We sold to Sam's Club. We did all the Sam's Club work together
It was
because
a no-brainer.
yep. And those brands wanted to create a great relationship with their consumers.
Right.
And they wanted their brand through the whole life cycle. So they could see it and it was like, well, of course I want the Sam's Club logo. Of course I want the CVS logo on the extra care points and all of that, right?
Yep.
It was all about, really, at the end of the day, was about customer experience. How do we connect the brand to the customer in a way that's elegant and easy?
Yep. Yep. So I'm going to fast forward unless there's some big things I'm missing, because I'd love to hear about your latest company. And I'm afraid to pronounce the name incorrectly. So.
Oh, no, that one's okay. You can give it a go.
Okay. Zitara?
Oh, look at you.
Oh, okay. So Zitara, and this is another company you founded. I mean, MK, again, she's worked at, companies like Epsilon and a lot of major players, and again, I kind of glossed over the first company you founded after Novell, which was a hugely successful company. So feel free to circle back or draw any conclusions from things you learned there that, again, helped contribute to, as Paul said, sort of what we see as your unbreakable spirit, and which even is manifesting itself when we get to it, and most recently during the COVID. But so feel free to go back in time if there's some lessons to be learned there. But otherwise, Zatira, talk to us about that.
Yeah, so this one, I'm not in the operations. So I got the privilege of co-founding it with Al Bergio, who is a serial entrepreneur, a Canadian. And we were looking at blockchain. You know me, right? I always like the new thing. I can't help myself. And then Julie Lyle, who was the head of marketing at Walmart and had great retail experience and things like that. I can't talk about it a whole lot.
I know her.
They are in stealth mode right now. They are out doing their fundraising. I am out of the day-to-day operations, and I'm an advisor to the entity. Chris and Paul, you're going to love it. It's all of the genius plus of some of my previous endeavors. What COVID did for me was it caused me to resurrect and add partners to Touchpoint Strategies, because everybody's everything is devastated right now.
Yeah. Well, talk about Touchpoint Strategies.
Yeah, so Touchpoint started as a management consulting company helping people with their MarTech stack, right? And if you notice, guys, like I'm in my Novell red.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
I still bleed Canadian red, Novell red. Touchpoint has the red dots. But Touchpoint is really about your business has been changed in such a, because of what's happened in response to the COVID crisis.
Yep.
What the COVID crisis did is it really put a spotlight on how interconnected we actually are. Most people were surprised, those of us coming from a network background, less surprised, right? And really looked at, like, if you look at it today, supply chain is broken, CRM is broken, the models that you use to understand your customer are broken. Like, your whole previous world, from process to data to platform, has changed. You can be despondent about that, or ridiculously excited that this is the opening to create a whole new way of doing business with your customer. So I was like, oh my God, we can't miss that.
No.
We got to go help people. We got to go help people. We got to get these brands. We've got brands that have like 400 point solutions.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The technology's gotten between people. Technology should be in the background to help us connect, to help us serve each other, to help us create great experiences. And now, when have you ever seen a global stop? So we wrote a process called Reboot, right?
Okay.
Because I'd love to believe I'm a marketer, but I'm really a nerd. But Carrie Harris, my partner, had the brand, so that makes sense.
Works for me. Who am I to judge?
And it's not a restart.
Right.
You really have to reformat and completely reboot your whole business. So we're coming out this week. I've got partners here. I've got partners in the States. Our clients are all in the US. We're helping private equity firms look at their portfolio and see what's been afflicted that is a non-changing affliction on your business. Right. And what is it that you can do inside of this new reality? There's nothing normal. Don't call it normal. It's like a startup.
Right.
You're stepping into something you've never seen before. So use your institutional wisdom, but now, to your comment, Paul, giddy up, let's go.
Right.
We got a chance to do some things right.
Well, I've had a chance to work with, you mentioned Julie Lyle earlier, through marketing stuff, and just think the world of her. And so you've got the right team. I mean, there's, what is it? It's team, idea, and a little bit of luck that gets you where you need to go. And man, it kind of feels a bit formulaic right now. Like things came into alignment. As much as COVID-19 has wrecked everyone's traditional views on sort of business, supply chains, all the things you talked about, it has also opened up a lot of new ideas, right? It's been the catalyst for really fantastic stuff. Yeah.
I don't want to be flippant about what's going on with COVID, but I can call it the best salesperson I've ever had. Right? Like we've been talking digital transformation forever. No. This is accelerated.
Yep.
Need for digital transformation. Things, Chris, that we talked about 20 years ago, Paul, that you've been at work on. Now companies are saying, absolutely, got to do it. Got to get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure.
So changed the way we thought about rumble. I can't miss the big rumble. I gotta.
Right. It's changed the way we think about e-commerce. It's changed the way we think about doing business face-to-face versus online. I mean, and again, I don't want to minimize the change. I mean, but those are just some of the immediate, for email marketers, just to bring it back for a second, email marketing is going to be more important in the marketing funnel than ever before, because as more commerce goes online, email as that connecting tissue between website or commerce location and the consumer, whether it's a transactional email saying it's on the way, or whether it's a promotional email saying people here's what you might be interested in this week. All of that gets more important.
Yeah, I agree. And like, look, we're at home.
Right.
Yeah.
All of us at our own homes right now. That's exactly right.
Paul's just hoping that somebody will notice, and I'll bring it up, Paul. He is actually that is not a fake background. Paul and his boys are on location of our last week's guest, Joe DeSena. Paul's up in Vermont for a couple of weeks. We invited up last week to bring his boys up for some wrestling camp. And he wants us all to know that's where he is. And he also wants us to all wonder why he got the invite and I didn't. And,
no, I didn't bring it up about that, but absolutely a gorgeous place. And, Joe, to share this, I mean, my boys are just absolutely ecstatic doing cartwheel stuff. It's super fun. But MK is also out of sorts a bit. I don't think.
Yeah, let's get to
that's.
I wanted to get.
Paul, I want to play just before we go to my current condition. That's the entrepreneur. You invite a guest to your show. They invite you to wrestling camp, and the entrepreneur says yes.
Yep.
And the other person says, "Oh, I got to check," or "I don't know," or "It's COVID," or right. And that's really the difference between us
and Chris.
And people.
She wasn't going to say "and me." I'm sure MK knows I'd be there if I got the look. I didn't get the look. You got the look.
I gave you the look. You're one of us.
So anyway, MK, we had talked, and I mean, the trials and tribulations, which I want you to talk about now that you've faced since the start of COVID, go well above and beyond. The trials you faced are well above and beyond what many people have faced, and yet the output you've managed despite those odds is truly amazing. What you've continued to do, and again that ties back into, well, part of my question is, did all of the obstacles you had to overcome in your career help prepare you for how you've dealt with COVID-19, and talk a little bit about that, and then talk about where you are right at this moment.
Like this second.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
Like this moment.
Right this
on
moment.
the phone, like right this.
Okay, so we'll start with that because Paul's nudging for that first, and then we'll go backwards.
Okay.
I am in a gorgeous Airbnb in Rosedale, which is a downtown portion of Toronto.
Okay.
I have no family here. I'll give you a list of trials and tribulations. I'm up here initially because my nephew is battling neuroblastoma stage 4. So trial and tribulation number 2, because he was diagnosed right after our father died. So dad dies, Hunter gets cancer, Charlie Stryker dies, MK comes to Canada. Few other things in there, IRS audits, a few lawsuits, kind of munged in to make it spectacularly exciting. So I'm headed back to the States. Hunter was well at that moment. I was headed back to the States, had just packed everything up. My stuff is in New Jersey in a storage unit.
Yep.
COVID hits. Canadians should stay home. I'm thinking, what's a couple of weeks? I am 13 weeks with 2 suitcases of clothes.
Mm-hmm. And you brought Novell Red with you. Smart.
I brought Novell Red with me just in case there might be a podcast opportunity.
You never
Very
know.
good thing.
You never know.
That's why Unbreakable spirit, baby.
But you do get broken down.
Yeah.
So on Mother's Day, when it snowed and I was in my winter coat that I'd been in since November, including in the condo, I did cry.
I bet.
Like, someone shoot me. But kind of the way that my brain is organized is, well, if you're not going to do something to fix it, who is?
Right.
Who is?
Yep.
So I did 1,300 kilometers on my bike last month outdoors. I've got a spectacular cycling partner who sells organic dog food, so we manage our meetings. I've always been an athlete leader. I rely heavily on athletics, some booze, athletics.
Yeah.
Good combination.
The martinis are going like this. So
They take on greater importance as time goes on.
Right.
But it's just not in my wiring scheme to languish for long or to stop. It's also not in I also don't deny what I'm feeling.
Right.
Charlie's death was devastating. My father's death was devastating. Hunter's cancer is something we manage as a family.
Right.
But you gotta just get up and go solve the problem.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So how do you do that? I mean, what you just described for a lot of people would be emotionally overwhelming. And yet you describe kind of a way to just sort of put a pin in it, compartmentalize a bit and go, okay, that's the sting, the hurt, that's just real life. I still have other things I need to get done. I mean, tell me a little bit about that. How does that work?
Yeah, so it's an interesting combination. So I was raised Catholic, but after a good divorce, I became spiritual. That happens to a lot of us. So each day starts with, a meditation and a gratitude prayer.
Yeah.
Even with all of my dilemmas, I mean, look at my environment. Look how privileged I am. And look how, I'm hanging out with you guys,
right,
talking about inventing things when other parts of the world are in absolute devastation.
Right, disarray, absolutely.
I've, as Chris said, I've lived in 5 countries. I've traveled a lot, so it's not lost on me how lucky I am.
Right.
I always try to remember that. I start each day in gratitude. Some days
That's
it
great.
takes a little bit longer. Some days it disappears before the first cup of coffee, and
Right.
it's just like hell no. Then exercise is there for the mental management.
Yeah.
And then when I get stuck, because I do, I'll reach out. I'll call somebody. I'll reach out to a friend, or I'll reach out to a business colleague, or I don't stay in solitary confinement, very long.
Right.
One thing that you've already demonstrated in our call here is, you talk about sort of calling friends, colleagues, whatever. There's a vulnerability that you bring, that you brought with us today, and the whole internet world behind us, right? But there's a vulnerability you bring. So when you reach out to those folks, there's a need to be maybe brutally honest about, here's where I'm at, to be able to connect with those people. Has that been your experience?
And that works for you and against you.
Yeah.
Right? It's something that your friends and mentors and the people who have your best interests at heart will help you with. And it's the opening that the people who want to devastate you will take advantage of.
Right.
And that's true too.
And you just have to be willing to stay open and hope that you get more of the first and less of the second.
But in general, aren't people good? I mean, isn't that kind of the equation you're dealing with there? Like, I'm going to believe that people are on this side, we have all the good people, and on this side we have all the turds, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that kind of the relationship you're counting on?
That is what you're counting on, right? And then if you want to attract more good, then just be good, right?
Exactly.
So don't, why would I lament my existence?
Right.
Like, really, today is spectacular being with you guys and talking about this, right?
Right.
So, but be available for that. Be a yes. When I work with student athletes, I'm like, don't worry if you know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Trust that the people that are inviting you to the table are there to have you be successful. They're not there to have you, fail or lose at the game. So, like, I called Chris, I was like, can you prep me just a little bit? He's like, no. And I was like, okay, I'll just trust you. I'll just trust you. With the whole conversation, I'll just trust you.
I said, Paul will try to zing you a few times, but I'll try to, keep
But
it.
I'll protect you.
I'll protect you. But, you talked about your, and I want to talk about this a little bit. You talked about how your work with student athletes, and that's another, why you've been confined, marooned, quarantined, in a small B2B, with 2 suitcases. You haven't, you haven't sat back, and you talked about this. You haven't sat back and felt badly for yourself, and I mean, you've more than that, even more than normal. Based on some of the things we were talked about, you've been doing even more to go out and help other people. And a lot of that, I think, is centered around your mentoring or working with student athletes and female athletes. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about, think about our fifth-year university students who didn't get to finish their athletic careers, and particularly women, right? We don't have a whole lot of professional sports to go to.
Right.
So when you finish your university career or your college career, it's something you've been doing since you were 4 or 5 years old. You're passionate about, and this is your grand finale, right? You're finishing out your athletic career, and boom, in a nanosecond, it gets ripped away.
Yeah.
And so does your co-op job, and so does your camp that you normally teach at and make money, and so does your community, because now you have to go home. And I'm like, wow, at my age and with my resources, this was confronting. In my 20s, what would this have been like? Your whole reality, you're all upside down. So yeah, my alma mater, U of Ottawa, reached out and said, like, would you be willing to talk to the students? And I'd been talking to the students about what we learn as athletes gets applied as business leaders. We learn how to communicate. We learn how to play on teams. Like, I want them to know that beyond the sport, they are skilled to go forward in their lives. And so, yeah, the university said, can you start talking to them? And now Ashley Burwell, who runs the alumni group, has a session every Thursday night, and 30 to 50 girls will come and talk about what they're bumping up against and I can't find a job and I don't know what that means, or I'm working in senior citizens homes and it's devastating. And they have a place where we can talk and share and figure things out and get them connected. And you get the coaching staff from all over. And now the guys are like, we want in too. It's like, okay, well, let's this is a human condition. Right. So yeah, I always try to think of like the other person. Oh my God, if it feels like this to me,
right,
what is it to that other young person who just doesn't have these resources?
Right.
Or our senior citizens.
Right.
My mom is a Zoom expert. She can do Zoom better than like 99% of the planet. 83 years old, and she's like all over it because it's like, Mom, I'm not going to have this length of time and not see you.
Right.
Well, I think, and what I love is there's this connection with positivity, right? In our world right now, we're calling it privilege, and I certainly think in certain circles that's fantastic. In Christian circles, the one that I ascribe to, we call it being blessed or a blessing. But it's very much this idea of no, there's this positivity about you that says I'm not a victim, I'm not stuck, I am where I am. And for me, I look at it and I say, well, how can God use me today, right? Mm-hmm. But translate that to your faith structure, whatever you want. It's helped you get to where you are.
Yeah, I actually think the problem's always the other person. I really do. I really do. If they don't get my greatness, it's just their fault. Like,
right. I have lots of people I can have tell you how great I am. I can write stuff for you, anything.
It's just like, well, I guess I tell people I'm an acquired taste.
Yeah, I was looking for something inspirational there.
No, I am so glad it went the direction it went, Marriott.
Well, the last thing I want to touch upon is you are personally and have long been an athlete, and I know that's shaped a lot of how you approach it, your life in general, and in fact, not just an athlete but an endurance athlete. And as you know, our guest last week was Joe DeSena, and as Paul has made sure we knew, that's where he is this week. Have you ever done any describe sort of the endurance events you've done, and have you ever done anything like a Tough Mudder or a Spartan race? Because I'm sure if you haven't, Paul could hook you up now that he's.
I know a guy.
Yeah, he knows a guy. So, and I know. I mean, my impression of you is that you're an endurance athlete. So, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I grew up playing hockey and lacrosse.
Okay.
On the men's team.
Right. Very on brand.
I have 27 stitches in my face and my original front tooth, but my mom put it back in for me.
I was going to ask, are those your original front teeth?
Those are the original
beat me to it.
But they have been put in. She dipped it in salt and then jammed it back in. It was a very
salt. Oh.
Yeah. I was a nationally ranked triathlete.
Okay.
Love that's right.
I've run 27 marathons all around the world.
What's your favorite one?
I ran the one when they brought down the Berlin Wall.
Okay.
So it was the first time that people had gone across and they gave us a piece of the wall. And this is when I was at Nobel and I ran it with some of my colleagues. For me, probably my favorite is New York because it's just the whole thing and the people and the
energy.
Yeah, and the level of support and commitment from the city. Tokyo was great.
Sure.
So I've relied on that, and it's that rigor, the training of the athlete, that helps me think out my ideas, right?
Yeah.
And so, as I said, now I'm active into cycling. My body doesn't really appreciate the
Pounding.
Pavement pounding.
the pavement pounding and things like that. I had a near fatal horseback riding accident that
Ooh.
broke a bunch of bones, and so things work differently.
Yeah.
I was a 4 handicap golfer, but now one arm's longer than the other, so we don't have that swing plane figured out.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I don't run around telling those things, but obviously now the whole world.
Obviously, now the whole world's going to know because
With our viewership.
it's yeah. I mean, you might as well have been headline on New York Times based on that.
So there we go. But it's kind of sports are like play to me,
Right.
right? Like when I get to go out after work and go for a run or something, I truly feel like I'm 4 years old.
Right. It's
And I get to be free, and eventually mom will call me for dinner, but till
Or
I
ring
hear
that
mom's
bell.
voice, or the bell, but till I hear that, I can keep going,
Right.
you know.
That's awesome.
And growing up in Canada, we got the 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm. True.
So it lets you, if you don't learn to be outside, you're gonna have a tough existence.
You're going to have a long winter, that's for
You're
sure.
gonna have a long winter. So, but I think it also helped me with business. It lets me relate to men in a way that I think if you don't have sports, it's harder. It's let me
Yep.
understand that I have to play my position to the best of my ability and help them play their position to the best of their ability.
Right.
It's kept me, the enemy or the competitor is outside of our company. It's
Yeah.
not between us.
Right.
Competitors are out there. So I get confused, right? We've had political colleagues in the past. I'm always confused, like, why is my own team player tripping me up,
Right.
right? We should be fighting those people out there. We should be fighting, the competitors. So it's helped me stay focused. It's helped me connect with people. It's beyond a geography. It's beyond race. It's beyond age. It's beyond gender. And it's the place where women athletes get to practice their masculinity with no consequence. In fact, the consequence is you might win.
Right. That's
And
great.
there are far worse consequences than that.
Yeah.
Yes, there are, as I well know. Well, Paul, I'm ready for the lightning round unless you have.
This has been so fun.
This has been great. This has been awesome. I know. I mean,
So no, I'd say let's jump into the lightning round.
Yeah, but and then we'll shower MK with praise as we walk off. But and I want to point out and well, lightning round, MK is at the end of every show I have 5 words and I say the word and you say the first thing that comes to mind. Typically we try to delve into one of your answers to understand you on a deeper psychological level. It doesn't always work. And I do want to thank fan favorite producer David Inman, who reminded me earlier today, Paul, don't botch it again, have the words ready. So they're actually on, I've actually printed them out. So I've been caught short sometimes, MK, but this time I have them. So lightning round, first word, marathon.
Pain.
Second word, sales.
Figaro.
Who was on the show a few weeks ago, you may recall.
I think that's what came to mind. I was looking at the previous podcast.
Third one, party.
All the time.
All right. Fourth one, I don't know why. This is part of, okay, anyway. Fourth one, tent.
This is awful. Oxygen.
Oh.
It is,
No, but I can understand why. I can understand why. I mean, shows how brains think. I was thinking camping, but given some of the things you've had to deal with, that makes better sense than camping. Fifth one, hockey.
Girls. Canadian. Olympic. Gold medalist.
Oh, were they? We're Americans. I mean, Canadians, gold medal, girls, boys, it doesn't really matter. They don't. That doesn't often make our radar.
Well,
I know.
more hockey that doesn't make our radar, Chris.
Yeah, that's true. Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of Canadian track and field athletes that I follow. Sage, I can't remember her last name. A woman who used to, I think, run for USC, a great hurdler. And I'm a big fan of hurdling, but I totally digress. But I wanted to prove my creds that I do follow some Canadian athletes, just not hockey. Should have done my homework. David, producer David, make sure I have a list. Every time we talk to somebody from a foreign country, I want a list of track and field athletes delivered to me before the podcast recording. Understood?
Totally makes sense to me.
I mean, what's he doing if he's not doing that? Anyway, MK, this has exceeded our wildest, or my wildest dreams. I mean, I knew it'd be fun. I knew it'd be great, but opening up, as Paul said, I mean, this has been, you've been very open and honest, and that's what we look for in our show. I mean, we really want, that's what we look for, and I think people are going to come away not just feeling that you are a very inspiring person, because you are, but also that they know you, and I think that's that's a great 1-2 sort of takeaway for people, and I think inspirational to men or women, but I think particularly for women, there is a great mentor right here. MK is, and you've heard her today. She is out there, ready and willing to help people who need it. So, don't be afraid. You see, she's a genuine person. She's a caring person. Now, thousands of you don't do it because she doesn't have that much time, but I'm sure she would be happy to help some people who might need it during this time of trouble. So, Paul, any last words from you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, is that the best way to reach you? MK, yeah, how would you like?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the easiest way. And I want to thank you guys, right? Like, this becomes possible because you've created the platform, right? All I had to do was show up and be myself. Mm-hmm. You guys, do all the work. And Chris, you've been cheering me on and encouraging me for 15 years in my career, in my personal life, in the upsets, in the tumbles. And that's what I want people to get. Like, in COVID-19, you should really just get, like, we are a network and we're in it, like, together. And I don't mean it like the politicians. I mean it like together, like your skills with my skills to do something to make a difference, right? Paul's skills, and that's really what the opportunity is. And truly, it was just a delight to be with you. It makes me think of when I used to come into your office on Friday, a little schnick of scotch.
I know. Always had a little bottle in there, and you were one of my favorites. You knew I had it, and you weren't afraid to come in and say, "Let's open that bottle."
We need to open that bottle this week. I'm having a very good moment right now.
Exactly. So, we'll have to have you back when you can talk about your current gig when it's out of silent mode, and because we'll want to hear more about that, and maybe we'll make it a special Email Geeks at Home Sipping Scotch episode.
Well, I'll be there, Chris.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in this week. MK, again, so happy to have you on. Great to connect again. And Paul, any last words before we?
Yeah, for our listeners, if you like what you're seeing, folks like MK, share this with people who need to hear it. This is only valuable when it goes on to the people that need to hear it. And if you walked away with something, there's probably people that need to hear it also. Mm-hmm. So thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work.
Absolutely. Thank you. What a great show is right. MK was terrific. And we really appreciate her joining us.
For sure.
We're here now for the post show. And as you can see, joining us is fan favorite producer Dave Inman.
Can I just say it's not just fan favorite, it's Paul favorite David Inman?
Perfect. No, it's Chris favorite David. I mean, it's Chris and Paul favorite.
There you go. Everybody loves the David Inman.
Everybody does love the David Inman, and David and I are cooking up some fun stuff for upcoming special episodes that you'll enjoy. Paul, you're aware of what we're cooking up.
I
but you're not
do.
necessarily-
I know
You're a
about
bit
your
player. You're a bit player. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to point out this week, I don't have a lot, but you'll notice I finally got a haircut, and I'm very happy about that. It's been a long time, and I did not feel well groomed, but now I do feel well groomed. And I wasn't as brave as Paul to cut my own hair or whatever it is that he's been doing, because his hair strangely doesn't seem to change from week to week. But that's sort of my big news for the week. Haircut checked off the list.
Well, we drove 15 hours this weekend up to Vermont. The boys, and so we actually put in an above ground pool. I think I told you that. It's sort of just dig, fill the thing with water, and then we hopped in the car. So my 3 oldest boys and I, we ended up driving. It was about 15 hours, again, based off of our last episode we showed, which was with Joe DeSena from Spartan Races. And it was just one of those things where it was like, yeah, we got to do this thing, right? Like, this will be great for the kids. It really was fun, Chris. Like, if ever, my kids are 18, 16, and 14, my 3 oldest. We won't get this time back. And it was really, being stuck in the car with them for that long was absolutely a treasure.
What did you listen to, if anything? Because I mean, when I'm driving that far, my attitude is driver controls music selection or entertainment selection.
At least most of it, yeah.
And I drive most of the time, so I'm kind of an entertainment selection dictator. What did you guys listen to?
Most of it, I would say, was probably Creedence Clearwater Revival. Yeah. I would say right after that, we did do a couple format changes. We did a fair amount of reggae. We did a fair amount of rap. It's sort of keeping the kids alive.
We know the kids like the rap.
Well, it is that, Chris, but it's also, when they're willing to share their music with me, I get to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what's in their head, what's in their minds. For me, it's part of being a good dad to know that. So.
Well, and what was the format of this? Was it Spotify, Bluetooth to your radio? Was it? I imagine you like with 8-track tapes.
I mean, that's exactly it. We'd be sliding the 8-track in. No.
David's a fan favorite producer. David's over there Googling 8-track tape, because the kids don't know what 8-track tape is. They don't know what we had to put up with.
Spotify Premium, Noah has, and then I have, and this is even, talking about sort of age defining. He uses Spotify, and I use Pandora. And, Pandora was an early, oh yeah, this is great. It creates the music I like. I really don't want to switch because I've made the stations the way I like them.
Well, the difference though is Spotify, you can create an actual playlist, whereas Pandora, because I use both, but once I got Spotify, once my son Danny, remember the son that he's the one who shared his Spotify account with me. So he's a good boy. He mocks me but put me on his family plan. And once he did that, Pandora sort of went away from my listening taste.
Yeah.
But Producer David, we don't want to leave you out of this conversation. Were you driving 14 hours in a car? What would you be listening to?
Yeah. What's
what
format?
So that's a really good question. Now that I'm an old man, my tastes have changed a little bit, and I typically tend to lean toward just exploring a discography. I went to New Orleans from Chattanooga last October, and that's a decent drive. It was maybe 6 hours.
Yeah.
And I did Weird Al Yankovic's discography, which never fails to entertain.
You should see your face, Chris.
Because I can't. I mean, that is the worst possible. I will never drive in a car with you where you control the entertainment. I mean, you could have said so many other things that I would have been okay with. You could have said 60s cocktail music. I would have thought, not necessarily my style, but okay. You could have said Zamfir, the pipe flute guy. I would have been, that would be painful, but you know what? I got to give the kid his due. But We're Al Yankovic. No, if we ever drive anywhere on a long distance, you are not getting behind the wheel. So that's that.
Fair enough.
Now, do you guys follow shotgun rules, Chris?
Shotgun rules.
Maybe,
but we may call it something else.
So I mean, just like because in our car, in our house, we have 5 kids, and they're all competing for
Oh,
shotgun.
oh yes, right. We
All
call
the time,
shotgun.
right? And there is absolutely sort of these are house rules. This is what we play by. But it's gotten so ridiculous that we've given up on those and gone to the internet. And there's like 48, 49 different rules our house follows exactly. It's a little nuts. And so kids are like, fine, chapter and verse. It's pretty funny.
For those of you playing at home, the simplest version of shotgun is you call shotgun and you get to ride in the front seat.
It's not that simple, Chris. You have to be outside the door for it to count.
It depends. I mean, one of the biggest controversies is at what point does it become okay to claim shotgun? And and that I think is the biggest controversy. Is it outside the door? You need a way to settle that. Is it? I've had kids of mine try to call it the night before.
Yeah,
how do you
adjudicate
that? How do you adjudicate that?
Well, that's why you have rules, Chris. That's why we have law and order.
All right. I mean, David, do you have any thoughts on this, on shotgun, and any sort of preferred methodology or rules behind it?
Well, I think as a parent, there's a you can position yourself where you can leverage it for disciplining the kids. Like Paul, you were saying, you have to be out the door. Does that incentivize your kids to get out the door as quickly as possible?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. And if your hand is touching the door of the vehicle, no one can swipe it from you. If your car crosses a country line, you have to stop the car. Everyone gets out and call shotgun again. Because you're on foreign soil. We have thought through everything shotgunning. I'm telling you.
But okay, so and how long does shotgun last? Until the car stops, or do I win shotgun for a day, even though there may be stops, bathroom stops, or gasoline stops?
Yeah, no, any stop. And the other thing that we do in our house is, if you get shotgun on the way to whatever the destination is, you cannot have it on the way back from the destination. Null and void.
Interesting.
And if you have a parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, any adult, that person gets to ride shotgun automatically because we want to honor those people.
All right, here's a riff on the same thing, and this is something that my brothers and I notoriously argue about. Say you're sitting around a fire pit, and there are some chairs that are better than others. And say you have to go in and use the restroom or go get another beer.
Mm-hmm.
What is the protocol? Do you still own that seat, or does that seat become open game for anyone that's still there? And can they take your seat?
I have an opinion. David, do you
like
have
your
an opinion?
I'm not a fan of seat stealing, no. Just a blanket statement. And I think that would
See, I agree with fan favorite producer Dave Inman. I think seat stealing is underhanded, and frankly, it could lead someone to go thirsty. I mean,
No.
It could lead to undesirable physical effects because I don't want to get up because I know I'm going to lose my seat.
You're lucky you're not in the same room as me right now.
Oh, really?
No. So here's the rules. If you get up, you have to make some sort of attempt at calling place back. You can say place back, you can say PB, you can say tap, tap. If none of those things are made, your seat is open again. Because the deal is, if you don't make those calls, you don't know that you're coming back.
Oh, but you're telling me you would honor?
Yeah, if you say place back, PB, tap, tap, make any kind of, or maybe even in an unofficial way, say, hey, I'm coming back. Would you guys save my seat? Absolutely.
Yeah, well, and among the brothers Marriott, there is no honor, and I could say, don't steal my seat, and one or more of them will say, oh, the second you turn your back, it's going to be gone.
Well, I believe that's been true for you in your fantasy football league amongst your family. Is that correct?
Well, it's a pretty cutthroat environment. I will say. I mean, there's love at the end of the day, but it is a fairly cutthroat environment. I have to admit. But
Well,
anyway,
I think we're probably good.
yeah,
I'll be
I
here
think we're
next
probably
week.
good.
I'll be here next week too. Looking forward to it. I'd say to our peoples, if there's guests you want to see, if there's things you want to hear, we'd love to, let us know. We've got the email address, emailgeekscoffee@gmail.com. We also have the website now, which I think is also Email Geeks Coffee, something coffee.
Something like that, but it comes up quickly. In search.
Super fast. So, we do want to hear again what the peoples want.
Yeah. So thanks as always. We always appreciate you listening in and tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you all back here next week.
Absolutely.